All right, so I have a new computer and I'm trying to figure out how the video works. So it might be a little bit different than the other videos. So we'll see how it goes. I'm here for writing for today. And today for writing, we're going to continue on with our fairy tales. We're not quite ready to start writing them yet. We are going to actually start writing tomorrow. So today is our last day of planning and rehearsing. Now, if you have not planned out your fairy tale yet on the little organizer that I gave you last week, you're going to need to do that. So you can't rehearse it if you don't have a plan yet. You can either print it from our class webpage or there's Google Sheets for you to fill out. I did the first one as an example for mine, and then some of your classmates have already filled them out. So that's the first step. So if you haven't done that, you're going to pause this video, you're going to backtrack to last week, and you're going to do that. If you have already done that, then you're ready for today's lesson. So you know as a writer that we need to rehearse before we start writing. We need to practice. Anybody who is going to perform or is going to play a sport or is going to present has to practice first. And we rehearse before we go ahead and jump into the actual task. So as writers, we rehearse our writing before we jump in. So that's what we're going to work on today. Now, with your fractured fairy tales, remember you were taking a fairy tale like The Three Little Pigs, Little Red Riding Hood, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, The Princess and the Pea, The Gingerbread Man, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, whatever fairy tale that you want, you're going to take that and you are twisting some part of it. So my fairy tale that I chose was The Three Little Pigs. And what I've twisted is the characters and the setting. Now, a lot of times when you change the character and the setting, it's going to change other parts of the story because you have a completely different place where your story is happening. So when we have the book that we read for reading, The Three Little Super Pigs, this was actually a continuation of The Three Little Pigs. The Three Little Pigs happened, and this was like the second book. This one was told by the wolf side of the story. So this was a true story of the Three Little Pigs. It's told from the wolf's perspective, from the wolf's point of view. And then we had this one here, which was Little Red Gliding Hood. This one still has the same characters, but the setting changed and the problem in the story changed. So there's so many different things you can change in a story. But because this is our first fairy tale that we're writing, we're going to just stick to changing either the characters, the setting, maybe even the problem in the story. Maybe we're going to change who's telling the story, but we don't want to change too much because it is our first time writing a fairy tale. So when somebody is getting ready to practice or rehearse something, they go over it before they actually do it. So as a writer, when we rehearse or practice something, remember back when we done this with our other writing, we can always rehearse it across our fingers. You can rehearse it to somebody else, or you can take a blank booklet. I just took some scrap pieces of paper and folded them, and you can rehearse across the pages of your book. So I'm going to model for you and I'm going to show you how I would do it with my story. And then I want for you to give it a try. Right? Remember, you have to have your planning done before you get to this point, though. That's the first step. And then this is the second step of rehearsing it before we start writing it tomorrow. We're going to start the beginnings of our fairy tales tomorrow, and I'm so excited about it. All right, so my story is The Three Little Fish and the Great Big Shark. So I'm thinking in my head of my planning sheet. I have my beginning, my middle, my end. I know what my problem is. I know what my solution is. And I'm going to use that. My planning sheet is right up here on my computer. I'm going to use that to help me rehearse. My rehearsal is just getting my ideas out. It doesn't mean exactly these are the words that are going to go on my page. It's just getting the story going, getting the energy going so that I can then begin writing my ideas down. And if you feel like you've got a lot of writing energy today and you feel like you want to get some of these awesome ideas written down, write them. It's okay if you want to start writing today, right? If you feel like you've got some really great ideas and you don't want to forget them, and write them down, right? I'm not going to stop you from writing ever. So on my blank book, my title is The Three Little Fish and the Great, I think I might change it, The Great White Shark. I have to play with that and see. All right, so as I begin, I'm just turning each page and thinking about what each part of my story is going to sound like. So the three little fish lived in the deepest part of the ocean with the mother fish. And the mother fish knew that they were getting old enough where they needed to go off on their own. So she sent them off to make houses of their own in the deep, deep sea. As they went off, the first little fish, he decided he was going to make his house out of seaweed. Right? The second little fish, he's going to make his house out of shells. So he goes around and collects shells of all different sizes and shapes, and he builds his house out of shells. And the third little fish, he finds a cave. And in that underwater cave, he decides he's going to make that his home. As the fish are busy collecting what they need for their home, off in the distance, there's a great white shark paying attention to these three fish that have moved into this area. And he's thinking, I've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So the big shark goes off to the first little fish's seaweed house, and he goes up to the seaweed and he says, little fish, let me in. And the little fish says, not by the scales on my finny fin fin. So then the great white shark, what could he say? He says, and I'll chomp and I'll bite and I'll make my way in. Right? So notice how, like, I'm making this story up as I go along. I haven't written the story yet. This is just based on my ideas. So as I got these ideas going, like now I feel like I am ready to get that pencil to the paper. I'm ready to start creating this story. And that's what rehearsing a story does for us. It's such an important step in writing. And a lot of writers, especially early writers, I think that we just want to jump right in and start writing our story. But if we rehearse it, we have time to practice saying those ideas out loud. And then that's going to make our story even stronger. So I'm going to stop right there, even though I've got so much more I want to say, because I want to make sure that I can remember these first few pieces of my story. And then as I get to the later parts of my story, before I write them, I'm going to stop and I'm going to rehearse them again before I start writing those next parts to my story. So writers for today, I want for you to practice this. I want for you to take your planning sheet and I want for you to either cross your fingers or to somebody at home or find some blank pieces of paper that you could tell your story across. I want you to practice. I want you to rehearse. Get some of those ideas going and flowing. And then when we start writing tomorrow, or even if you want to write today, right, we're going to begin these incredible fairy tales, right, that hopefully, I'm hoping we actually can celebrate in some way together. All right. Happy practicing, happy rehearsing, and I'll see you guys later. Bye. I'm done with